Well, joining us here in the studio is the former Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Mr. Netanyahu, thank you for joining us with reaction to those latest figures, because certainly many Israelis perhaps have believed by now they would be safer, that the rocket attacks would have been contained, curtailed. Ehud Olmert said that the Hezbollah infrastructure was being dismantled. Clearly, though, they've still got a very effective military capability.
That's true, and I think that makes the objective of removing the threat, destroying their capability, eliminating their missile arsenal even more imperative. I think the fact that you have, according to your reports, five innocent people targeted, wiped out deliberately, not accidentally, but deliberately. The fact that 2 million Israelis are in bomb shelters. The fact that a bicycle rider yesterday went out to get his dog, to put him back in the shelter, got killed. We can't live like this without eliminating the threat. And you can ask a question that I would ask for all those who question Israel. What would you be saying today? What would you ask Tony Blair to do, the Prime Minister of Britain, if London was being rocketed by hundreds, indeed thousands of rockets? You'd be screaming your head off saying, get rid of that, the source of that fire. And I think in this sense, the Israeli public is behaving miraculously, courageously.
The issue of proportionality, of course, has been raised in many capitals across the world. What would you say would have been a disproportionate response then to those rocket attacks?
Well, I don't want to say a disproportionate response, because then I'd be criticizing Britain. But when London was rocketed, Churchill's response was to flatten German cities. Dresden was wiped out completely. And I do not criticize Churchill's government for doing that, because it was, in fact, a time of great urgency. The main point is that the only way that we can judge proportionality is to ask, how did other countries behave under similar circumstances? When Syria, that attacks us, criticizes us, wiped out 15,000 civilians in the Syrian town of Hama in one afternoon, I don't think they can voice an objection.
We'll assess that in a moment. We're just getting some breaking news, which we'll just update people with in terms of the Forest Gate anti-terror raid. We're now being told that Mohammed Abdul Kahar, the man who'd been shot in the shoulder during that police raid, has now been arrested by police in terms of charges regards pornography allegedly found on a home computer in the house. That's just coming through from Scotland Yard. Of course, it is the case that the police operation, in terms of his shooting, was an accident. The police's independent complaints commission has just decided a few minutes ago. So that breaking news is coming through from Scotland Yard. We'll have reaction on that fairly shortly. Let's return to the situation in the Middle East, because in terms of a proportionate response, there are those who say that Israel fell into a trap by doing what it did and reacting in that military operation so quickly, and in terms of trying to defeat Hezbollah or degrade them, as the phrase was used, on the ground, that was the way that Tehran and Damascus knew Israel would react.
Well, I'm not sure it's a trap, but I would think it's only a part of the solution, because Hezbollah wouldn't last a day without the support of Iran and Syria. Perhaps 2 days, but no more than that. These fighters of Hezbollah that you see were trained in Iran by the Iranian army, supplied in Iran by the Iranian army, and also by Syria. So they're an extension of Iran, without a doubt. We have to defend ourselves, so we go after the immediate threat. But there ought to be a division of labor where the international community would place enormous international pressure on Iran and Syria, the way station. And of course, we would complete the job of dealing with Hezbollah. There is no substitute, by the way, of dealing with Hezbollah. We have to deal with them. But it is a necessary but insufficient action to prevent the repetition of this kind of aggression.
But that is when you're talking about Hezbollah as an entirely separate terrorist force, an army within an army. But there are those who point out that Hezbollah has great backing in terms of the social care and social structures provided for some people, particularly in southern Beirut, the health centers and so on, that if you're trying to defeat an idea, you won't win in those terms.
Well, we must win, because it's an idea that is, it's not social welfare that gives them their power. What their idea, their guiding idea, they express openly. Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, says it directly. it's to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, regardless of what territory it's in. We could leave every square inch of Lebanon as we did. Israel has to be wiped off the map.
You've still got that problem, though. If there is a buffer zone that's established where the rockets are free.
Let me complete the small idea, even though we're in soundbite land. It is a profound idea. You're dealing here with a mad militancy. There are two mad militancies going on right now. Al-Qaeda, which represents the Sunni madness, going after a twisted vision of Islam from one direction, and Hezbollah in Iran going from the Shiite side. Now, they're competing with each other for supremacy. They've been competing for 1,000 years. One of your ambassadors, former ambassadors, said today there's going to be civil war in
Iraq. Yes.
Hello, it's been going around for 1,000 years. So yes, they're fighting with each other, except now they have rockets and bombs to do that. But the second thing is that they think, these mad people, that fighting with each other is a small prelude to fighting and defeating the West. And Israel happens to be the first Western country in the way.
Is that Israel's problem, that it wants to defeat Hezbollah as a military force and as an idea, and you're not going to achieve that, and particularly if you're going to look at a buffer zone of some, 5 to 6 miles, that there will still be a Hezbollah in the rest of Lebanon, perhaps not in terms of its military capability, but the idea will still be there?
We have two tasks. One is to remove the immediate threat of Hezbollah, and you're quite right that a buffer zone merely reduces the friction along the border. So there is no substitute for actually taking out the main part of the missile arsenal, the main part of Hezbollah.
You failed at.
Which we've not yet accomplished.
At the moment.
We've not yet accomplished, but by the way, there's enormous support that I, among others, give to the government and the people give to achieve it.
Yeah.
But that is only part of the problem. The big problem, the mother of all problems is Iran. The fact that if it arms itself with nuclear weapons, it already has the missiles to reach London, and soon it will have the missiles to reach the United States. They're developing those missiles not because they want to target Israel, they already can, but because they want to target you. So unless the West wakes up and realizes that there's a new fascism here, a new Islamic Hitlerism that threatens the Islamic world, but threatens the West.
Well, let's take a look at that bigger picture, because we've got France distributing this new draft resolution this afternoon. Certainly the French indication is that they want to engage Tehran. They don't want to actually treat it as a pariah state, that it has to be part of the equation. Israel, I assume, is not going to accept that.
I think you do have to engage Iran, but engage them in the way that they ought to be engaged. You have to put the pressure on them that they've been trying to avoid, and perhaps have avoided by using this proxy war, not to, first of all, to disarm, not to be able to arm themselves with atomic weapons. I think that has to continue. Secondly, I think they have to be pressed. They shouldn't be given carrots. They should be held, a very big stick should be held over their heads to say, thou shalt not arm your terrorist proxies so they can rocket innocent civilians.
Last question, and very quickly. Does that mean that Israel cannot afford a tie, a draw, if you like, that you, in your view, have to win militarily for you to feel safe and for that peace plan to come into being?
Yes, because if all you have is a ceasefire, if all that is produced by these papers that you showed me of the UN draft resolutions produces a ceasefire and some papering over of the incidents, well, then we'll take an aspirin for this cancer. We have to excise this cancer. This alien ideology that has implanted itself in Lebanon at the behest of Iran. And if we don't do that, then the next thing that will happen, Hezbollah will be there with Iran prodding behind it, arming itself with still more missiles, waiting for the next round, eviscerating Lebanon in the process, eviscerating peace in the process. I think that as hard as it is, we have to do our best to defeat Hezbollah, I hope, on this round, and secondly, to press Iran to cease and desist what it's doing.
Benjamin Netanyahu, thank you very much indeed for your time. Thanks for joining us.